To it. So, welcome to another edition of the Alien Spaceship podcast talk show with myself, Emmy Hikins, and
And with me, Trevor Gear.
yeah, good. So, what are we going to talk about today? It's very
Well,
interesting
a few
what's
things.
about
Yeah, go on.
the
Go on.
conspiracy theory that you talked about the last time. Not the last time, but you sent me a video about
Yeah.
yeah, you sent me it was a link, and you said, are we being softened up for something? Is
Yes,
that you know, it kind of
yes, I did send them. Yeah, I did send the video, didn't I? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it kind of made me laugh. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? It's obvious that, we're no longer as strong as we used to be as a
Well,
human race.
it just feels like we're constantly sort of taken advantage of. I mean, perhaps that's not the best way to put it. I think we're going through a phase in our country where we don't really have um, effective politicians across the board. I think we don't have an effective police force. I think, again, politically, I think they reduced the police years ago. So, and on top of that, just to sort of pile on the misery, nothing much seems to work, but in our country. But I guess I think these things are sort of they go on a cycle, don't they? And then somebody comes along, cometh the hour, cometh the person, and then things start to improve. So hopefully that will be the case with us. But yeah, I think that's what that video was about. It's sort of, instead of saying, well, we're going through a down cycle, it says, we're being taken for a ride by our politicians. And I think there's some truth in that because they seem to be so out of touch with everything as far as the ordinary person in the street is concerned. So yeah, it's not a great time, but then again, I always try to look on the bright side, and there are bright things. There are good things in our country
Yeah.
still, and hopefully always will be.
Well, that's I mean, I mean, we're all hoping, aren't we? We're all hoping that things change, but it looks bleak going forward, you know.
It
Well, my
does.
opinion, yeah, it does look bleak going forward because there's a lot of distractions, isn't it? There's a lot of things that sort of, I don't know if it's orchestrated to sort of divert our attention from the real
Mm,
problems. For instance, they talking about this. I mean, it was in the news. I think it was in the news last night. They were talking about this fertility, not fertility. It was this hormone injection that they give to kids,
right.
at
Yeah.
an early age. And
The
they
gender thing, isn't it?
yeah,
The
yeah,
gender.
yeah. And they were
Yeah.
talking about they were going to stop it and then make it so what trial. So they were going to do it like a
Yeah.
trial. And I'm thinking, well, you've administered it and now you want to take it back to the trial stage. I don't get it. You know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
You
No,
think
it's strange.
you'd think the trial would come first before then actually
Yeah.
administering the drugs.
Yeah.
It's like
Absolutely.
so there's always a cover up, isn't it? There's always a cover up. Um,
Mm,
nobody wanting to take the blame, really. It's like, well, if we admit that we've got it wrong, then somebody has to pay. And it ain't me.
mm,
That's what I'm getting anyway. That's what I'm getting when I look at the blunders that they do that
yeah.
yeah, that does happen. I think, well, somebody's definitely playing is pulling the strings. Um, but the distractions are very clever, aren't they?
Well,
The,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
distractions are very
They are.
clever. I mean,
Mm,
I was watching the news. Yeah, it was yesterday as well, or maybe 2 days ago. And the latest distraction was a photoshopped a photograph
yeah.
released by the royal
Yeah.
family, you
Yeah.
know, And they were like,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and they were like, oh yeah, this is photoshopped. And I'm thinking, who cares? It's a photograph.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
I mean, you're right. It's a huge distraction, isn't it?
yeah,
And it's exactly that because, yeah, the bottom line is, frankly, if they photoshopped a photograph, so
yeah,
what? I mean, it's almost like slow news days, isn't it? There's not much else to say, so they say that, or as you suggest, it's because there's other bad news which they don't want us to really focus on, so they come up with some ridiculous thing. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange time, really is.
it's very clever. I mean, I do admire, the effort that they put into it, to then, because they must have sat down and think, right, what are we gonna use as a distraction to,
Mm,
shift everyone's attention away from the real thing. Oh,
mm,
I know, we'll get somebody to release a picture and then we'll find faults in the picture. Who cares? Do you know what I mean? I don't care if the picture is photoshopped. Everything's photoshopped these days. Do
mm.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, there's AI now. I've seen things on Facebook where, people that I know very well, they'll modify a photograph and you can clearly see that it bears no resemblance to the true person,
Mm,
because everything's been touched up, and that you can do in like a minute, basically. So you click on the app and it takes
right.
a picture and then it modernizes it. If you have no hairs like me, you'll have hair straight away. So I'm thinking, who cares? I don't care about that. Tell me something. You know,
Yeah. I
tell
think
me.
the truth is we'll never really know what. I mean, some people say if we really knew what was going on, politically or in other ways, it would make our hair curl, sort of thing. Others say, well, this is life. People in politics these days are not particularly impressive. I mean, I'm not sure they ever were, but we can all pick out people from the past who clearly had a massive positive effects on events in the country at the time. I mean, obviously, like Churchill and Thatcher and others, but nowadays we seem very short of quality people in politics.
Yeah,
So I don't think we really know what goes on most of the time. So we just have to get on with it, don't we? And make our own path, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah. And talking about these, still on the subject matter of this conspiracy theories. Um, it's something that was mentioned, although it was mentioned like briefly on the news, and it was that airplane, that missing airplane, the
Yeah, yeah.
MH370,
MH370. Yeah,
that one, the Malaysian air,
that's
airline.
weird, isn't it?
I know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding
Mm.
that, the disappearance of the airplane. And the one that kind of stuck out for me was that, they've been abducted by aliens. It is ridiculous, but that's the one I want to believe in.
But well, that's the thing is that is ridiculous, or so we think, provided they do eventually find the plane. Now, I mean, I was watching probably the same thing you watched, but there was a thing on Netflix or something the other day about that, and there's a guy there, I forget his name, Richard something, very clever bloke, and he's analysed some radio wave lines that go around the Earth. Very, very difficult to understand,
Wow.
but he says I'm 99.9% sure if they follow what I'm saying now, I can lead them right to the plane where it is. And at the same time, excuse me, at the same time, it was saying on the program that the Malaysian government and possibly the Chinese, I can't remember, and the Australian, because they've all been involved in the search,
Yeah.
they're thinking of starting a new search and they'll decide by June. Now that struck me as really odd, really, because although they've had lots of searches, and it is a massive area to search, of course, but
Yeah,
I find it a bit odd, given that they found confirmed pieces of the wing,
yeah,
um, that they haven't, they've done computer tests to see where that wing, how it went across the ocean and so on. I think it was found on Reunion Island off
right.
of Madagascar, but they still haven't found it. And the fact that this very clever bloke, and there's others as well, has said he's pretty confident he knows where this now will be. Um, and he's so confident that he says if they search, they'll find it. But the governments there, they seem reluctant to do it, which only leads to people thinking, well, it probably is some sort of a cover up. I mean, I think a lot of the thinking is that the plane was shot down,
Right,
possibly by America. I read a book on this aircraft thing a couple of years ago by a French woman,
right.
and she analysed the whole thing. It's a very good book. And at the end of it all, her conclusion was she thought probably it was shot down by the Americans. I don't know quite why, whether there was someone on the plane they didn't want or whatever. But that seemed to be a conclusion. But then that program the other day seemed to say that the captain, he may well have committed suicide and taken a whole load of people with him. So
Mm,
we'll never know. But if they don't find the plane,
yeah.
I think that probably simply means it's going to be covered up forevermore.
Wow. There's a lot of things like that in the world. I mean, there's one that's closer to home, and that's the is it the Loch Ness Monster? The one in Scotland?
Yeah. I'm not sure that's a conspiracy.
What do you think that is?
It's
I actually think he exists. I
you
think,
do.
well, I do. I do. Call me crazy, but I might as well wear a tinfoil hat now.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously different creatures in these places, but
Yeah,
it obviously is good for the economics of the area, isn't it? They don't ever want it solved because then, the Loch Ness monster is something that everybody knows about.
yeah,
And if it was if I owned that Loch Ness, I wouldn't want anyone to say, "Oh, I found out what it is. It's just a normal one, but much bigger or something like that."
yeah.
So yeah, it suits them to keep it as a mystery, doesn't it?
Well, I would, yeah, if it makes money. If it brings tourism and all that to the area, I would as well.
But I'm not overly impressed with you bringing up the MH370, given that in 1 week's time I'm flying on an aeroplane to New York. So just when I'm getting myself calm about, well, I don't mind flying, but yeah, I hope we don't disappear.
You know, I, I can't, I don't like flying, I don't like it.
No, you don't
No, I don't. I'd avoid it if I could. I don't know.
really.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable flying. Yeah, it's
You
just,
do fly though sometimes, do you?
yeah, I do, unfortunately, but yeah,
Yeah,
takes a lot of courage that. But unless it's up,
yeah.
unless it's absolutely essential,
You don't
I'd
do it.
rather not. Yeah, it's just, and I'll tell you one thing I'd never go on, a helicopter. I'd
No,
not go on a
no.
helicopter. Would you?
No, I wouldn't. I
No.
mean, it's statistically, it's more dangerous to go in a helicopter. And again, statistically,
Yeah.
we're told, and I'm sure it's true, flying is the safest place to be. There's more danger driving to the airport on the roads than actually being in an aeroplane. And when you think, I think it's something like 10 million people a day fly in aeroplanes. And at any one time, there's millions flying around the globe, and it is quite incredible that flying has achieved such a good safety record because it sort of. I mean, I don't really like it. I do it because I don't want to not travel,
Yeah.
but I'm not a great fan of it. It gets a bit boring and so on. But yeah, I think it's amazing it goes against every instinct, every human instinct. We're not meant to fly,
Not
sort of thing.
designed to fly, are we?
Um,
No.
so yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but there is an exhilaration to it. I think that it's also very clever, and it's also an exact science. I mean, they know precisely what the wings of a plane will lift and the angles and so on.
Right.
And let's face it. I mean, a few years ago now, um, my then wife and I, we took in trainee air stewardesses.
Right.
They came to us probably for 1 month or 2 months for 6 or 7 week courses, and they were flying pretty quickly with the airline at the time, and it was just for most of them it was just so routine. Um, and I actually lived with an air hostess, air stewardess, 3 or 4 years ago. She lived with me for about a year, and she was lovely. And that's another story. But she went off three or
Right.
four times a week, and she said, "See you later," and all that. We gave each other a kiss, and off she went. And it never occurred to me that she wouldn't come back, and nor to her. And I think when you see, air crew, flight crew, and cabin crew, they're so relaxed and nonchalant about it. It's it. I don't think there's any great need for people to be frightened. One of the worst things, I suppose, is turbulence.
Yeah.
I've experienced that a few times, and if it's bad turbulence, it's not dangerous, but it can be very uncomfortable for a while. But
Yeah.
generally, they try to fly above the weather, so to speak. So shouldn't normally be a problem. But again, we talked about distraction,
Yeah.
and I think cabin crew are very good at distracting passengers because they know there are quite a few nervous people.
Yeah.
And one example, a few years ago when we were flying to America. I think we were going to Florida. I can't quite remember, but on a Virgin 747, and yeah, it was all going fine and everything. And I suppose halfway there, it's about a 9 or 10 hour flight. Um, I think I was watching a film on the screen, but they suddenly announced over the intercom that they were going to do a competition for all the passengers. I think there were over 400 passengers on the plane,
Right.
and they said, "Well, there's 24 crew on this plane, which is a heck of a lot. I mean, there were two
Oh, that's
pilots
a lot.
plus two pilots plus on a long route they take a third one as well, and senior stewards and junior stewardesses, all the rest of it. And I think altogether it was 24 people. I mean, just as a statistic again, the average distance cabin crew walk on a transatlantic flight is about 15 miles. It sounds ridiculous, but
Wow.
it's how they walk. Anyway, what this on this particular one, there was an announcement. They said, right, we're giving you all a competition, and the is prize is a bottle of champagne. And the question was, they said there's 24 crew on the plane, including the three pilots. Um, we want you to guess and write it down. They'll come round and collect it. The average age of the crew. So again, it was a distraction. So I mean, I thought, well, let's go for this. And I think they said there were 424 passengers on the plane. Anyway, that's a bit irrelevant. So I thought, well, I don't really know how old the captain is or his co-pilot or the other, but I thought they're probably mid-40s, something like that. I worked on that basis.
Right.
And then I thought that we obviously saw some of the cabin crew, the stewards and stewardesses. They come round with drinks and everything else. So you see roughly what age you think they are. Anyway, long story short, this great calculation on a pad of paper. Because again, it was nice to be doing something different than just staring at the screen. They're very good, the screens with the films and other things, but you get a bit fed up after a while. So it was good. So I worked this out, and eventually I forget what answer I came up with, but I think it was something like 33 or 34.
Right.
So obviously there were younger ones, older ones, and so on. And they collected all the answers from people, and it was about an hour later. They said, "Right, same on the tannoy on the system. We've got a winner." And I thought, yeah, I don't think it's me. And they said, yes, it's Mr. Trevor Gear in
No
seat
way.
number. And they said he was within about 3 months. I think we put months down as well of the right thing. So, and everyone was clapping. I felt quite good, really. And then she appeared, lovely woman appeared, lovely girl, with a
Yeah.
big bottle of champagne and a kiss on my cheek. And so, yeah, it was nice to sort of win out of that number of people. So, but again, just the reason I say all that
Yeah.
is distraction from, suddenly all of our thinking was about those who were doing it,
Oh,
about the age of the crew. So yeah, it's good to be distracted, I think, on a flight
yeah.
because it can get pretty boring otherwise. But
Yeah.
that was that. That was that.
I know, because when you started it, I'm thinking, where's it going with this? Where's it going with this? I know you said distraction at the start of it. Then I'm thinking, where's it going with this? And then you arrived so beautiful. That's, that's a lovely that's a lovely way to arrive at your point. That's beautiful,
It
man.
was good. I
Yeah,
remember when we got to the hotel. We got to the hotel and we opened this bottle of wine between us,
yeah.
and not wine, it was champagne. It was not genuine champagne, and I think we were very very tired. Although it was only about 4 or 5 in the afternoon when we got there, but of course you get jet lagged. Really, not too much going that way. It's coming back when it's worse. But no, we had some champagne and then went down to dinner. So it was a nice end to what was a very long day, really.
Yeah,
But yeah, so that was good, and it actually reminds me of a thing. My boy Paul,
yeah,
again, this goes back 4 or 5 years. One of his pals at work was getting married to a Chinese girl, and the family. She was from a very wealthy family in China, but not one of the main places like Beijing. It was hundreds of miles away from the main places, so it was quite. I don't remember what name it was, but it was remote from the big cities and things.
yeah,
Anyway, so Paul, he went out there for about a week, and he said it was incredible the wealth of this family. Ironically, um, they got married over there, and a year later they divorced. So it was all a bit of a waste. But the point I was going to say was he was out there thousands of miles away from here. Now it was on a Saturday, obviously, because I was at the football team Crystal Palace that afternoon. Um, and of course, the Premier League games are all televised, every one. Not necessarily live, but they'll go on Match of the Day and so on. But this particular game, he went to bed with his
yeah,
partner in the room in the hotel, and I mean I think they were 7, 8, 9 hours ahead of us. It's a bit like Australia in that sense. It was way over in China.
yeah,
So they got into bed and they turned the television on because they could see that they could get English Premier League football matches. A lot of countries do. And he said his partner was laying down, she was laying down there. And he thought, what? And his Palace came on the screen, which is the Crystal Palace, so he wanted to watch it. And he
yeah.
said, I didn't believe it, Dad. He said this when he got back. He might have sent me a note on the phone. He said, I didn't believe this. He said, but suddenly your face filled the screen. He said, "What, me?" He said, "Yeah, it wasn't just like they panned fairly close onto the crowd." He said, "Your face filled the screen during the football match.
Yeah.
It's not like I was wearing a funny hat or something. Perhaps they thought I looked a bit odd. I don't know." But he said to his partner, yes, he said, "That's my dad," because she didn't know me at the time. And she said, "What?" I think she must have thought he'd lost it or had too much to drink. He said, "No, that's my dad." And she said, "Quick, quick." He said, "Quick, look." And he said I was on there he said it seemed a long time. It's probably 10 seconds or something. So
Yeah.
I never found out why they chose to focus on me. I suppose I should be flattered, really. But he said, I'd never believe it. I've gone all that way away. He said, and suddenly you appear on on the screen, filling the screen. So that was a bit of an odd one, really. A bit of an odd claim to fame, let's face it.
I can imagine the look on his girlfriend's face. Like, what are you on
I don't know. I don't remember, but at the time, I seem to remember he said she thought I'd had too much to drink because she's sort of laying there ready to go to sleep, I suppose, or whatever. And then he says, "Look, it's my dad on the screen," and you think, "Oh gosh, is he all right? Has he lost it?" But no, it was, and he still tells that story now occasionally. He said, "Yeah, because I told you, he does a podcast about
Yeah.
the football most
All
Sunday
right. Yeah.
nights."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've heard him mention that story before now.
It is
So it obviously struck him as very, very strange. I mean,
strange.
to
Yeah.
suddenly
Yeah.
find his dad
Wow.
on the television like that.
No,
But yeah, that was a bit of a strange one.
thousands
But
of people there, and they chose to show
yeah,
up.
yeah. Well, I sort of dined out on it a bit. Yeah, they obviously wanted to look at me in the crowd and all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I mean, because you never know, really. I mean, we sit quite near. We're 5 rows back, so quite close to the front, directly opposite. And we're not in the middle, but we're a little bit off of the centre.
Yeah.
And the cameras obviously are in the middle. So they do, we're facing the cameras. And of course, there's cameras all around the ground these days in football matches. So yeah, I know when I watch football on TV, they do pan in on people, but more often than not, it's someone who's got a ridiculous hat on or some strange scarf or something that singles them out. And
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't
Yeah.
think I was wearing anything strange that
You,
day.
you was
But
probably
yeah,
wearing
never forgot that.
you was probably wearing
Hmm.
your Hawaii shirt. You know, one of them.
Yeah, yeah, I don't usually wear that. I probably had a scarf, a palace scarf on, but yeah, that was a very strange one to be picked out like that.
You know, talking about that on, I don't know if you've seen one of these things on Facebook where I think they call it a kiss cam. So they'll,
Yes, I've seen it.
oh, have you
Yeah,
seen it?
yeah, absolutely. And it can turn nasty sometimes,
I
can't it? When
know.
they show some of the American ice hockey games or whatever,
Yeah,
if you don't know the person, I remember watching one of those not long ago, and I think the bloke concerned because they see their picture suddenly up there. He thought it was his lucky day because he didn't know the woman,
yeah.
and he gave her a kiss, and his own girlfriend, assumed she was her girlfriend, turned on him really angrily and hit him and all the rest of it. So it may not be the most sensible thing to do.
I've seen one where I think they were probably friends, and they were just they must have just gone together to watch the game, and
Mm,
and the camera zoomed in on them, and there was pressure on them then to kiss, and and
yeah,
and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I've got to kiss you, I've got to kiss you," and the
yeah,
girl was going, "Get away from me!"
yeah. She wouldn't do it, would she? I
Yeah,
remember that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
she was punching him and slapping him and all that, you know, because he was trying.
I mean, we don't seem to have that, do we, over here? Probably a good thing as well.
I don't
It
think
could be awkward.
I don't think it'll work in this part of the world.
No,
I think we're a bit
no,
too.
it probably wouldn't.
No, I don't think so. I think people probably protest and write to the TV stations asking them to stop it.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of complaints going to the TV station going, you can't be airing that on television, you know? But whereas the
Yes,
Americans, they're a different breed, aren't they, Americans, you know? They just, you know,
in some ways, I mean, people often say the humour's a bit different. I think
yeah,
it is. I mean, I've got some American friends, and I think they understand our humour over here. I think I like American people. I always have done over the years. I don't think they get a very good press from us for some reason,
yeah.
but I think they're a decent people. I do.
Oh yeah, I love Americans. I just think that, you know, they're quite different to us. That's you know, they're
In
quite
some
different.
ways, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, in some ways, yeah. Because the sort of things that, you know, you get away with in America, I don't think you'll get away with it here. You know, it's
no,
at that kiss cam, for instance, you know,
yeah, that's
I don't,
right.
yeah, I don't think you'll get away with it here, in England. Do you know something we've never talked about on this show? And I don't know, I can't remember, but I don't think, to my recollection, I don't think we've ever said anything about it. It's relationships, Trevor. we've never talked
relationship.
about we've never talked about relationships. And what I was thinking is, um, how do you know if you're just lusting after someone or you're in love with them? At what point does oh,
It's a dangerous area.
I
This.
know, I know it's a dangerous area. I
No,
know
I know what you mean. At
yeah,
what
I know
point? What were you going to say? At what point do you know which it is?
yeah, I know it's a dangerous area because at what point is it when you go to court and you have to be and you're giving a restraining order or way before
It's a shame if it gets that far, isn't
I
it?
know. But yeah, at what point do you think, well, hang on a minute, I don't think she really likes me. I think she's just being nice, or I don't, or for the opposite sex, I don't think he's into me. It's just, at what point, where
Yeah,
where do you draw the line, Because some people are naturally nice. Some people are naturally nice.
yeah,
They can't be rude, they
yeah.
pride. And so they'd say it in a very perhaps not in a very direct way, but in
Mm,
a subtle way, they say something like, I don't think we're compatible, or
yeah,
I don't feel the chemistry, but we're not talking about that side because that side is the dangerous area. But we're just talking about, at what point do you pick up a signal and think, I
mm,
I should probably say something, and at what point do you think, well, hang on a minute, maybe she's just saying hello, or maybe it's in a work setting. So in a work setting,
yeah,
somebody that's nice to you, ask you if you want a cup of tea when she's going to the shops, or do you want a drink? And she gets you a drink, she says,
yeah,
get you a drink. Or makes you a cup of coffee in the office, says, do you want a cup of coffee? Do you take sugar, and then she does it. And some people would even go as far as opening up to you. So they'd say, well, this
yeah.
is you, and they share certain intimate things with you. So at what point do you then say, well, hang on a minute, I think she's in love with me, or maybe
Yeah, yeah, it's a hard one, obviously, but
it isn't
I
it?
think it's talking of songs, which we weren't, but I think my one of my songs, Aphrodite's Voice, if you remember that one, it
Yeah, I
it
remember
sort of
that. Yeah.
covers this covers this bit about um, you know being in the friend zone,
Ah,
and the song sort of says about I forget my lyrics, but along the lines, every kiss that we share, somehow I can tell you're not really there. So it's the guy saying, and maybe it's something most people have experienced, that he's very much into the girl, the woman, and he senses that it's one way. Sort of unrequited love, I guess, and I think that phrase is also in the song. Um, so yeah, I think that song says it, but I think in my view, and I suppose based on my experience, really, um, I think there comes a point where I mean, it's like you see it in a movie that someone would say, "Well, how do you know when you're in love?" And the answer usually is something like, "Well, you know when you know." And I think that probably is right. I think we can't help it but
mhm.
give off a signal or signals if we are attracted to somebody. I mean, they say, bodily signals like your pupils dilate, your pupils in your eyes get bigger. Um, and you mirror if you're sitting having dinner, you mirror each other's body language, and I think there are signs that people do give. I don't think we can help it
No,
if we do like somebody. Now, whether that attraction, I don't think we can analyze early on when you meet somebody that. You can't analyze what sort of attraction it is. Is it love? Is it lust? Is it infatuation? Whatever that is, really. Is it a crush? All those words we use, none of them may turn into true love. If again, it depends what we mean by that.
yeah,
But yeah, I think we live in a time of monogamy, don't we? In relationships, people expect to live just with one person all their life, or they're expected to. And in many ways, it's not surprising that something towards 50%, it's about 45% of relationships, or certainly marriages, break down and
Yeah,
end in divorce. So
hardly.
it's quite a tough ask. And of course, previous other generations in times before are not, and some today, some religions, and they don't limit people to one wife or one husband. So it's a lot. It's a huge subject, but yeah, I put what I thought about it in Aphrodite's voice, and I'm actually, funnily enough, I'm going to re-record the lyric, the singing on that, because I don't know whether you find it, but sometimes if I hear my songs back occasionally,
Yeah,
um, I think I didn't sing that one very well, and I suppose that is inevitable. It's not many I think like that,
yeah.
but Aphrodite's voice, I think is a good song, and I think yeah, I'm going to try and redo those lyrics and try and not the lyrics, try and re-record the singing
Yeah.
to try and get it up to speed. But yeah, it's an interesting subject that you raise, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to explore it to the too much because it's I think it at the end of the day it boils down to the individuals, don't it? It boils down to what you feel because
Yeah, yeah,
you can never what's that word? Reconstruct visually what somebody else feels. It's in
no,
them.
of course, no.
Only them can. But it just got me thinking, it just got me thinking about, at what point do you think, well, hang on a minute, she's not interested in me? Because mind you, feelings do change, don't they? So somebody could have a feeling towards you today, and they wake up tomorrow and they think, you know what, I don't feel that way anymore. And
Mm.
I suppose that's what
It's a
happens.
bit sad to look, bit sad that to look at it that way. I would have thought,
Yeah.
yes, if somebody becomes dissatisfied, uncontent in a relationship, then it will eventually collapse, won't it? But yeah, it's a very interesting thing. What is it that makes people attracted to each other? It's an interesting subject, a vast subject as well.
It is, isn't it? It's